So, it's the 19th century. You want to make a living as a musician. You've chosen the cornet, or in the 19th century, it would have been the cornopian in the mid 19th century. Now, first of all, the cornopian isn't really a cornet. It's a cornet is two-thirds conical tubing roughly and one-third cylindrical tubing roughly. You reverse that for the trumpet. The cornopian is about 50-50 cylindrical and conical tubing, and but it's kind of sounds like and performs like because of its proportions and its bell and the way it's made, especially the old ones with Stetzel valves. Anyway, you want to make a living as a musician. You get this notion in your head. Okay, well, how long does it take? Well, in those days, it took 3 to 6 months, if that. You literally picked it up and learned it on the fly. The same as things haven't changed. Rock and roll musicians still do this. They'll pick up a guitar and a few months later they're wailing. And so how do they get so hot so fast when the wisdom is, I want to play the violin. It's going to take like 8 years of hard working and 10,000 hours of study. Baloney. No instrument takes that long to learn to play professionally. Now, a professional musician, this was true even when I was a kid, you would just pick an instrument and you would work really hard, get some guys together, and form some kind of a band and get out playing and making money. People today seem to be pretty clueless about how this process works, and they look on the weeb and on the interweb, and they gurgle searches, which is an execrable thing to do. Don't use gurgle. It's a horrible search engine. It has been corrupted with popular searches. You'll never find what it is you're looking for. You will think you are because you're sort of a participant, but anyway, so you want to play an instrument, and I picked the cornet for a reason, but this applies to all instruments. You want to play professionally, you want to make money. Now, let's take a look at a catalog, mid to late or even late 19th century. And it's, what's all these? There's page after page after page after page of cornets, the Levy, the Arbuckle, the Emerson, the Jean-Baptiste Arban, the Courtois, the Besson. What's going on here? Well, what everybody fails to tell you is what's going on here. The instrument was fairly new, and there was a craze on in the 19th century. And let's touch on that first, because there's a lot of misunderstanding about that too. A lot of it has been corrupted by Hollywood. It's like this. You see a western, and then there's a saloon, and there's honky tonky 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 tonk on the piano, and that doesn't give you any idea of what people were actually doing for a living. That's a caricature. That's just one guy doing his thing. It's like this. There were traveling tent shows in the U.S. and in Europe and Canada and other places and in Australia, starting in about the 1830s. And it had different names in different places, and this is where vaudeville came from in the U.S. And the tent shows were the equivalent of today's rock concerts. The tent shows, why did they have great big tents? Because the venues have to be portable and they have to be huge because you've got like acrobats and you've got Jean Baptiste Arban climbing up and a little band going and he's climbing and sweating and climbing this 800-foot ladder, gets to the top of the tiny little platform, and then he jumps off and he performs Flight of the Tweedledee 800 times before plunging into a bucket of boiling fat. And so what's going on here? What's this all about? Well, Jean-Baptiste Arban was playing in these traveling tent shows, as were a lot of these guys whose names were on cornets. Levy, Arbuckle, Emerson, blah, blah, blah. Now, what are they doing playing at these tent shows? Oh, they're entertaining, so they're getting paid for that. No, 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 no. That's not what's going on here. This is what has been left out of the history books. What's not taught here is the reason there's all these different models of cornets is because guys are getting individual patents. They're looking for a little tweak, a little humdinger, a little boop, 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 and attaching their name to it so they can get a patent, and a patent is more money. But, okay, well, and yeah, they're selling things in catalogs, but who's really selling them? Well, it's like this. You got a bunch of young people in, say, a high school band, or a university band, or a university music class, and just pick people at random. You want to become professional musicians, and your weapon of choice is the cornettist, mid-19th century. And okay, how do I go and make money? Well, you do lots of things. One is you learn to dance, and you learn the names of all the dances. You write music. You write music that's dance music. You play dance music. You play dances. That was a very good way to make money. You just throw together a little group and you find a gig somewhere. And if the traveling tent shows were the rock band concert halls of the 19th century, the bars and saloons were the pubs and bars, the bar band circuit. That's the relationship between the two. You would see the people that you would see that would come around to your town would be part of these tent shows, and but they would play smaller venues to make ends meet. And the tent shows are really reserved for as a summer activity because tents are impossible to heat. At least they were in those days. Another thing, as small towns grew across the West, across everywhere in North America, and this is also true in Europe, you would have old barns that were once, this place started out as a little farming community, and the great big barn that had once belonged to Sanderson, Sanderson's barn isn't making money anymore because the city has grown up around it, and the farmland is way out, and now it's standing empty. Well, a fellow like Dodworth, and this name is important, Dodworth made brass instruments. He made what he called Eber cornos, or New York horns. He wrote dance music. He played dance music. He taught dance. And he wrote books on dance. All of these were ways that he made money. Now, point to your kids in the class and say, a bunch of you guys want to, you're in the 19th century and you want to make money. What do? Okay, tweak a little thing, a little knob, a little something on a cornet or a cornettist, get a patent, because that's where the money is. If you're just making a knockoff, you'll make money, but not as much money as if you got a patent. And that was a big deal in the 19th century, that all-important patent. If you wanted to make money, get the patent, get some kind of an original little idea. Now, you're playing in bars and saloons, but the big dance Dodsworth would rent. It was a hall as big as a barn. Well, it was a barn, and it was in the middle of town, and then it went from being a barn to being remodeled as a big dance hall. And that's how it went in those days as the West was growing. Now, the first bands, this is also important. The first bands, this happened simultaneously in the UK and the US. The first bands were a made thing. They were bred in circuses after circa 1812. Guys started well, the newly minted middle class started collecting and wanting stuff, and to keep their minds off politics, the politicians of the day deliberately concocted brass bands, concert bands, wind bands in the States, in the UK. They were a made thing, bred in circuses. That's where this all started. Now, the tradition at the time, besides the bread and circuses thing, of making money is you've got to have several sources of income. You can't limit yourself to one thing. You can't just teach. You can't just build instruments. You can't just play in a dance band. You're going to be on the go all the time. Now, these guys, you look at your students and you say, okay, you're Emerson, the cornettist. What do you do? Well, you go to, and if you're in Saskatoon, you go to Kevin Junk, Musicraft, and say, build me my model of cornet. And when I go to my traveling circus tent show thing, I'm going to sell the cornets that you made under my name. I may have had something to do with it. It may have just been a discussion. I may have be really good at. I may be a builder myself, but the reason for all the names is these guys were selling their instruments. They were that had their own spin on it. They were teaching. They were instructing dance and music and teaching people to read music, and they could play multiple instruments in those days. You read about guys, you'd be a brass player or a cornet player, but he had to meet up at 11:30 on Sunday morning to give Susie Ennerstein her piano lesson or her harp lesson. He had a broad general knowledge of a lot of different instruments, most of them, all of them in the area in those days. Now, it doesn't take long to become proficient in a dance band because most of what the functional players are doing is the easy stuff. If you can keep a boat, if you can keep a beat, if you can read basic music, if you can follow what the other musicians are doing, if you're having trouble reading, just doing it will turn you into a pro in no time flat. It's still done today. That's how, well, when I was a kid, just starting out, this is, back in the 60s, 70s, if you had a bass, you'd be hired just like that. Whether you could play or not, just stand there and go boom, 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 boom. We'll show you where to move your hand, and it's in the middle of the gig. There was such a shortage of bass players. They would train you on the job, and practically the same with drummers. Just go boom, 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 boom. Just keep doing that, and we'll be fine. We'll teach you the rest, or we'll get you somebody who knows what he's doing and give you some lessons. So, this thing of, I got to study for, 8 years to become, no, you don't. You just go out there and do it. And it hasn't changed. Like when I was a young guy, guys were still doing this. Like Bobby Harriet had a Harriet horn, the trumpet with the bell that goes up like that. And Dizzy Gillespie was flogging his Dizzy Gillespie horns with a bell that went. and sax players were flogging their name on stuff. Um, and people who wanted to be associated with it would just buy it, whether it really had anything to do with it or not. Harry James and his son on trombone used to play a dance club on Scott Road in Surrey when I was a kid. And, we could hear their band from blocks away. Boy, they were loud and they were good. But the thing is, all those traditions were still going. There's Harry playing and he's pushing Parduba mouthpieces. He's got to make money somehow. And he's giving lessons. And my old trumpet teacher from that time, Bobby Hilton, had he was trying to sound like Harry James, and he was using the same kind of mouthpiece, and he was giving lessons. And boy, oh boy, we didn't know it was desperate times in those days. Why did we have such great teachers in the early '70s or late '60s, early '70s? Everybody was out of work, and everybody was running from city to country to country, trying to chase down any gigs there were. Duke Ellington was reduced to playing legions. I saw was this Maynard Ferguson and his band play at a high school in Burnaby or New Westminster. I think that was over the line. That was in New Westminster. But I didn't, we thought, us young musicians at the time, thought we were going to inherit the jazz world, and little did we know. We didn't take the warning. There were the skinny guy with but he could play just as high as Maynard Ferguson, nowhere near as loud, but he could just and during the break we came up to him, and because Maynard was off somewhere. Now we want to do what you're doing, and he just looked at us like we were brain dead, and he says, "No, you don't. You have no idea." And of course, we did have no idea, and it was impossible to explain that the world that we thought that we were going to inherit no longer existed. It was just hanging on by the skin of its teeth and slipping fast. Anyway, getting back to the 19th century and the cornet. So these guys, Harry James and his son, both knew how to dance. They had dancing shoes. And they played dances. They knew dance inside out. Can you play a cha-cha? Can you play a rumba? Somebody would just come up. Can you play more waltzes? Can you play more of this? Oh, of course. Bam! I got 12 set lists of schottisches and waltzes and whatnot. Now, it's even true in today's pop musicians. If you're not paying attention, you don't know that even if you're not into that kind of music, like Beyonce or Britney Spears or any of these other pop divas with 30-inch waists, 19-inch waists, and they know dance. Of course they do. Now, they may not know it by the same names as the old timers, but you know that one where you go that kind of beat. Oh yeah, I got a dozen of those. Oh yeah. Well, they can play dances and they can play weddings. They would never be out of work, even if there was a huge downturn in pop music. They would find a way to make a living. Why do you think ABBA is so popular at weddings? They know dance. The guys that write the tunes know it gets people up dancing. Now, getting people up and dancing is not as simple and straightforward as all of that. You have to pay your dues, as they say. You have to start from the get-go, getting up in front of people, unafraid of making an ass of yourself, and just play. And if people are going to dance to it, they're going to tell you what you're doing wrong. But you want to get people up dancing, you have to learn to work with the dancers. It's like I've said before about playing big band music. If you're just playing big band music, just playing trumpet or trombone or sax or drums or even guitar, you're just a wanker. You're not playing big band music. The only way you're really playing big band music is if people are up on the dance floor and that dance floor is crowded and you're playing to that dance audience. It's dance music. If you've forgotten that, or you never knew it, you better learn. Because if you want people to want to demand that you play, it's no wonder that so many bands, well, it's really good. Oh, they can really play, well, but they're not getting asked back. And it's because, well, we're not a jukebox. People, what about the music? Think that way if you want to be unemployed. And that's how musicians thought in the 19th century. They knew dance. You look at the records when the record industry first started. Those old different OK and all those different blue labels and purple labels and whatnot. I can't remember the names of them off the top of my head. But you look on the labels and it says Foxtrot, March, two-step, three-step, hop de doop de doop de doop step. No, I'm just making that up. But people back in the, say, the 10s, 20s, 30s, 40s knew what those dances were and knew how to do them. It's good to see that So You Think You Can Dance is on TV because young people have taken an interest in ballroom dance again because that's where it is. But every young musician should be watching that show and learning how to write music that people can dance to because it will give you gigs, it will give you longevity. People will demand your presence, and that's what you want. You can't just go out there and say, I'm an entertainer, I play the, well, whatever. Nobody cares. If when somebody goes to a so-and-so concert, you look at the people in the audience, they're up there dancing and having a great time. If it was just about the music, they would be gone and forgotten in faster than it would make everyone's head spin. Now, the with the plugging and the making a living, musicians, well, look at Benny Goodman and Artie Shaw. They were selling clarinets, and clarinet sales went through the roof because they were. Benny Goodman wasn't an approachable guy, but Artie Shaw was, and people wanted to play like that. And boy, they were walking billboards, and they were connected to the industry. And you wanted, if you were in the industry, you wanted those guys to be mascots for you. So anyway, people just naturally did the business back in the 19th century. They didn't second guess it. They just knew how to do it, and they just went out and did it. There's none of this, oh, I got to study. I got to do this. I got to do that. No, you don't. Pick it up. Start bashing away. Get out there and play. Shake your booty, and the rest will follow. Trust me. Trust me. Or not.